Hi, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to my weekly podcast about spirituality, love, death, devotion, and waking up while living in a messy world. The Satsang with Shambhavi podcast is recorded live each week with students of our nonprofit community, Jaya Kula. For more information and to find out about attending a satsang, visit jayakula.org. Thanks for listening. Much love to you, wherever and however you are. One time I went to a shaman, it was a long time ago. She was in Seattle, and she said to me, "Your job in this life is to make your whole body a prayer." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "I don't know. That's just what I got. You have to figure out what it means." It was actually kind of wonderful. And then I, a couple years ago, wrote a doha called Make My Whole Body a Prayer, having finally understood what that means. The only thing we're doing here is learning how to worship. That's what we're doing. So there are many ways that we could talk about our practice or Jaya Kula or our community, but I think the best way is as worship. We are learning how to worship ourselves, how to worship others, how to worship everything that our world is made of. And worship meaning to approach everything with a feeling of reverence and prayer and something that you value and want to take care of. That's what we're doing here. And whether we're learning highfalutin philosophy from Trikashaivism, or we're doing mantra, or we're doing meditation, or we're cleaning a floor, or scrubbing a toilet, or relating to each other at a dinner party, or going to a movie, or sitting around yucking it up about science fiction, or taking a walk, or welcoming guests into our space. Everything that we're doing is about learning how to worship. And that's what I'm doing too. I'm learning how to worship. I'm learning how to make my whole body, energy, and mind a prayer. How everything I'm doing is worship. That's what I'm learning too. It's not about getting anything done or fulfilling a duty or anything like that. It's about learning how to worship. And of course, if we were all worshiping all the time, our world would not be the way it is right now. That is for sure. We have to relearn how to worship ourselves. And there's all kinds of things we do to avoid that. It's much easier to be comfortable. Worship is a very alive state. It's a very alive experience. So some people want to avoid that by hiding out in routine and routine ideas, routine activities, routine relationships, routine goals, routine accomplishments, all of those things that are ready-made, pret-a-porter lives, ready-made for us. Even like ready-made resentments, ready-made revolutions, ready-made complaints, ready-made outrages, ready-made traumas, ready-made romance, ready-made everything. We can find a ready-made version of anything that we might want to do in our lives. But worship is always alive and spontaneous and intimate. It's intimate. It has that quality of such aliveness that sometimes people would rather avoid it and just hide out in routine, in the ready-made. The other thing about the worship that is everything Jaya Kula, and one of the things that's been hardest for me is that so many people have retreated into routine. There's so many like giant geological layers of crap that we're all dealing with. Any one of the things that's happening would be cataclysmic in people's lives. But there's like 3 or 4 of those things happening. So it truly is a time when people feel overloaded and overwhelmed and at a loss and afraid and kind of amazed and all those kinds of things. So retreating into routine is one routinous way of dealing with this. Retreating into habit is the habitual way to deal with this kind of thing. But using it to experience the aliveness of groundlessness and to connect more with each other is really more way of the practitioner, the way of someone who wants to discover wisdom, who wants to live with their whole body being a prayer. So one of the things that's been upsetting for me is that as people are retreating into routine, I'm offering more and more opportunities to worship. And there are people who are my regular students who are retreating into routine while I'm offering all these opportunities to worship. And that has been something for me to digest, right? I want companions in worship. I don't want to be worshiped in the sense that as anything special. I want us all to worship everything, and I want to worship along with other people. That is probably my deepest longing. It's one of the reasons I love going to India, because there's so much public, overt worship happening that when I get there, I just feel like, I'm among the worshipers. I just want to be among the worshipers. I'm just saying that, especially to people who are already students of mine, that I feel sad, I feel sad that more of you have not taken the opportunity to go deeper into worship, but instead have gone deeper into routine. And I'm trying to not only provide more opportunities to worship, but also to show you my worship more. And that feels great to me, actually. I'm not going to stop doing that, but I wish that we would be more creative and more creatively engaged with each other and more knowing the value of being together in this and not retreating. And again, it's not like I don't understand it, but I just find it heartbreaking a little bit. So my heart's a little bit broken, is what I'm saying, which is actually a good place to practice from. When we're being practitioners, when we want to discover what we really are, these times are the gold times. These times when everything's falling apart, when it's harder to maintain our usual shticks. Because that's what we're trying to get rid of. We're trying to learn to live in total spontaneity. And the spiritual community is a training ground. The teacher is training wheels, training appliance. Our fellow practitioners are helping us. But the idea is that we're being that to everyone, being worshipful to everyone and everything, not just the community or the teacher. These are the times when things are falling apart, when we can really find out where we are and hopefully find the courage to mine the wisdom and the opportunity in these circumstances, not retreat. We can still take care of ourselves. I'm not saying everyone should be foregoing self-care. I think we all should be extra self-carey. But not retreating, right? Not retreating into routine and faux accomplishments. Nothing is off the table in terms of how you could live your life as a person in a direct realization tradition. There's nothing off the table. You could live however you want to live. You could do whatever you want to do. But everything has to be worship. Whatever you're doing, it's got to be worship. There can't be a division between my spiritual life and my other goals. If there is, you're just not being a practitioner. That's just not what's happening. So sometimes people make a false dichotomy that, I want to go pursue these other things now. And they make a false dichotomy as if there's something in the tradition that says they couldn't do those things and still be a practitioner. That's just because they don't want to be a practitioner while doing those things. But the idea is that we're being a practitioner no matter what we're doing, whether we're like the CEO of a bank or a baker or raising our kids or whatever we're doing, we're being a practitioner. And that means being in touch with presence and being in a state of worshipfulness.
Is there a tantric way of doing anti-racist work?
We have a much deeper past than just the past of this lifetime. And we have many more lives coming into us, creating this, than just what happened in our childhood. So I've said to explain how we are with this enclosed story about the childhood of one lifetime is not effective. It doesn't mean that we don't contemplate how we are, and it doesn't mean that we don't notice how certain things have contributed to that. It doesn't mean that we can't look to our childhood and find some stuff that's useful and have some understanding, but we should also always have the understanding that our understanding is always limited. We should never try to come up with a complete enclosed explanation for anything, basically. What we want, if we're going to indulge in explanation at all, should be functional explanations. What is practical and functional of service, right? So in terms of any phenomenon, including racism or the history of racism in any particular country, and also Western histories, the whole enterprise of Western historicism is to come up with complete explanations of things. So when we're reading a book, the value is in the impact, the effect that it's having on you reading or other people who read it. And what does that do to change our conduct? How does that transform the way that we live in our body, energy, and mind in the world? And how can we become more worshipful? If it helps you become more worshipful toward yourself and others, and to embody that in whatever way you do, whether it's in a micro way or a macro way or a political way or at the dinner table way, whatever way, all of that is useful. We're interested, you asked about tantrikas, we're interested in functional help to be more open-hearted and to have more access to wisdom. Just don't close in on, I have the one true explanation for everything. If you think you have the one true lens of analysis or the one true explanation or the one true history or the one true answer to the question why, you are always wrong. Like anyone who does that, you're always wrong. You never have the whole picture, and that's what we should keep in mind. It's a kind of fanaticism, and it's a sanctioned kind of fanaticism, right? I used to be in academia where we got paid more if we had the better bow-tied explanation for something, packaged and wrapped. But it's not alive. It's not commensurate with the vastness of reality and the vastness of cause and effect and the vastness of what's beyond cause and effect, right? The spontaneity of this alive, aware reality. So we use things that are helpful and we applaud the helpful. And I think that's as far as I would go. When things aren't the way we want them to be, we just have to resign ourselves sometimes. Sometimes when things aren't the way we want them to be, that's because there's an opportunity to change them. That can happen, right? That's sometimes the wisdom is, okay, you don't like it, change it. But sometimes the wisdom is, this is just what it is, and right now there's not an option to change the circumstance. So what do we do then? Well, then we have to resign ourselves to it. And that isn't fun. I think it's some of the hardest work that I do as a practitioner, is when a circumstance just isn't ready to move. It's not time for it to move. And I know that, and I don't like it. And I have to just keep telling myself, I say, this is the meal that Ma is serving me. I have to eat it. We all have things we wish were happening, I suppose, unless we were perfectly enlightened. Maybe we wouldn't have that. But anyway, I know I do have some things I wish weren't happening. But then immediately I think, this is what Ma has served me. And there's something here that's beneficial for me. And that's my job, is to find that. And that's along with this feeling for the time. We can actually feel time and circumstance and feel when it's time to move and change and transform something, and feel when it's time to just dig in and work with it as it is, showing up.
Can you talk about not spiraling into self-concern when you get difficult criticism?
It takes practice. Our culture is definitely criticism phobic. I think we're really paranoid about being criticized. I know I am, and I've worked really hard to not have that experience. It's a really awful experience. Again, my default when I'm dealing with stuff like that is that everything that's happening is happening for my benefit. These difficulties are happening so that I can learn, so that I can divest myself of my defensiveness. That's my go-to place for how to work with stuff like this, to immediately remember Ma and remember that everything that's happening has benefit and everything is for my benefit and everything can be used to help me to wake up. So I don't go to the inner talk to try to talk myself out of feeling bad about stuff. If I feel bad about something, like, or if somebody criticizes me and I feel badly about it, or we can feel badly about it. It's not unenlightened to feel badly about something, but that sort of repetitious going over stuff and inner defensiveness and stuff like that, I just don't worry about that. Like, I try to just let that stuff go till it just dies out of exhaustion. And in the meantime, while that's happening, I try to remember that, okay, yeah, I'm sensitive to criticism, and this is something I need to divest myself of. So what better way than to be criticized continually and get over myself, right? That's what I do. I don't try to control the thoughts or the feelings. I treat them as if they're unimportant guests, uninvited, unimportant guests, right? And it's like, just go over there and do your thing. I'm going to do this thing. So I don't try to squish myself down or talk myself out of anything. I just let the energy run and just try to redirect my energy towards something else. When people criticize me, I also consider it. I don't just go, bullshit. I also consider when people say things to me, but I don't chew on it. It's like, okay, yeah, I get that. That's right. Nope. I do try to take from it. If there is something of value there, of course. But I don't worry on it, or I do sometimes worry on it, but I don't worry on my worry, if you know what I mean. It is good to consider, but I also think sometimes women over-consider. You have a sense of yourself, and you have a sense of whatever it was fine, and then it gets criticized, and then you feel like it's incumbent on you to consider even the most ridiculous criticism. I find women do that a lot. Satsang with Shambhavi is produced by Jaya Kula, a nonprofit community offering opportunities to learn and practice in the direct realization traditions of Trika Shaivism and Dzogchen. If you enjoyed listening, please help us keep this podcast and many other teachings open to all by making a monthly or one-time donation. Visit jayakula.org to make a donation and explore more of our offerings.